In five, four, three, two. Welcome to Presidential Experience Live, uncut, and today it's going to be uncivilized. Let me tell you why. You remember our guest, Traver Boehm, for a couple of months ago. He was on the show. I got lots of requests to bring him back. And because today we're talking about mental health and how men and women, we affect each other's mental health. And I thought a great guest to help me talk about this would be Traver. So I'll give you some, I'll put his bio in the show notes, but let's just get into it because I don't want to miss a minute of it. And he's got a great, like a pretty busy schedule. So, Traver, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me. What a timely time to be having this conversation, huh?
Yes, right. And
Right?
so a lot of people said, Kane, who's that guy, Traver? Like,
Mm.
well, first of all, they said you were so unexpected and kind of like the time that we're in, right?
Yeah.
and and they liked how you were, I'm gonna use the word kind of all over the place with me because
Yeah.
I am, but not everybody can go there with me.
I'll go anywhere.
Yeah. And then we kind of got a little bit of flack though on our love fest.
We
Yeah, they were
did.
just
Tell me.
like, they were like, could you guys just get a room? Like, what was going on with the friend crush thing? Like,
You know,
I was like,
two
hey,
attractive people on video, whatever.
like
It
whatever.
happens.
We exactly virtual hug over here.
Exactly.
So yeah, we got a little flag, but I was like, because you got so many great requests and reviews, I was like, we gotta come back and we gotta talk about this subject of how men and women are affecting each other's mental health during Mental Health Awareness Month. And like you said, at this time in our lives, because there's some stuff going on that is really affecting our mental health, but
Mhm.
then we're adding to each other's drama and stress and trauma.
For sure.
Yeah.
It feels like everybody's emotions have been amplified.
Mm.
And I'll say that even of my own, right? There are times when I'm significantly sadder that I'm like, what the hell is going on? Why am I so sad? Or unbelievably angry for no particular reason. Like, what the hell is going on? And I
Mm.
feel like the pressure cooker of a lot of just even being indoors, being inside with partnership, and the heightened stress that a lot of people won't acknowledge, which is this background noise of we actually have no idea what our world's going to look like 2 months from now, 3 months from now,
Mm.
a year from now. And that unsettledness, we can go to this spiritual idea that like we never knew, we never have control. But you
Yeah.
know what? 8 weeks ago, I had a pretty solid plan for the year. And I was like, if you had asked me 8 weeks ago, is anything going to come and derail this entire thing? Like, no, maybe if I like break my leg or I find
Right.
out I have cancer, but no. And now what do
Yeah.
you know? Boom. Everybody woke up with that diagnosis 2 months
Yeah.
ago and their lives shifted drastically. And what happened? So many of us were our partnerships were put in a pressure cooker, or people who
Mm.
are in partnerships got put in a pressure
Yeah.
cooker. Our relationships with ourselves got put in a pressure cooker. Our
Yeah.
relationships with friends, with neighbors, with coworkers, everything's in a pressure cooker. So what a great time to be talking about mental health, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I love so many things that you said. What I love that pressure cooker analogy because it is like now it's all forced to be, and maybe before you can escape and move and maneuver or bring other people in,
Mm,
and yeah, you had like ways to circumvent the drama,
mm,
but not anymore. It's like
no,
lights, like all the lights are shining on. What was done in the dark is in the light.
for sure.
Yeah. And you talked about the uncertainty of the world, right?
Yeah,
But there's still, for those relationships where there was uncertainty in the relationship. Now it's like,
right.
wait, I was thinking about leaving. Now I'm stuck
Yeah,
here.
right. There's so
Yeah.
many unique positions that humans are
Hmm.
put in now. And I
Yeah.
would always tell my guys, cracks in your foundation will always be exposed either through pressure or time.
Mm.
So if you're in a relationship that has some cracks in it, you add a baby to that, That's the pressure, and the
Yeah.
relationship blows up. Or you have cracks in the relationship. Oh, it ends at the 10-year mark, 5-year mark. Time is what ended
Yeah.
up breaking it.
Yeah.
And now we are just, the pressure is so much more heightened. And the situations that people are dealing with are things that they never thought they would have to deal with. And I have friends who are divorced and sharing a child and have very different ideas
Mm.
about what's safe and what's not safe. And one person has an in-law, an older parent that lives with them, saying,
Ooh.
hey, you're not just bringing my child home to me, you're bringing my child home to their grandparent, my parent, who will not survive this if they get
Mm.
sick. And so there are
Yeah.
these situations that, again, 2 months ago, we never would have thought we'd have to be communicating about, acknowledging, feeling,
Yeah.
alchemizing, working through, dealing with. It's such a fascinating, and I don't want to take away from the challenge, the real challenge, or what are people doing with that, about not having money, not
Mm.
having,
Yeah.
security, having their stocks, all of it. It's just
Yeah.
it's a pressure cooker. We can leave it at that.
Yes.
It's a pressure cooker.
It is. And I'm going to go back to what you said about that co-parenting thing, but I think that's heavy for families, period.
Mhm.
So, for example, like you and I were talking, and I travel a lot, and you do too. And so, but in traveling, I was upsetting my parents. Like my dad called me. My dad does not call me. I talk to my dad through my mom. Some of you might be able to identify with this. I call my mom, or my mom and I are on the phone, and she goes, "Your dad said blah blah blah. Your dad said blah blah
Yeah,
blah."
yeah.
Or he might take the phone and say, "Hey, Kane, blah 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 blah, whatever," and then he gives it back to mom. He doesn't actually call my phone unless he butt dials me.
Oh, I love it.
He will text me, but he will not call. So I knew when I got this phone call, I knew something was up. And he had recently got out of the hospital. So he
Mm,
has a compromised immune system. Um, and
mm,
so it wasn't COVID or anything like that. And so I get this phone call, and he says, and this is, I'm glad I'm talking to a man because you're going to help me unpack this. But I know my dad and I know men. So he says, only, what did he call them? Only foolish people are traveling right now. And I was like, did you just call me foolish? Sit down. And I was like,
yeah,
okay. And my parents are liberal. They don't tell you to do or not to do anything. So
yeah,
for him to call me and say, only foolish people are traveling right now,
yeah.
sit down. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, okay. He doesn't
Yeah,
make many requests. So for him to make that request, I knew what he was saying was, I'm
right.
worried about you.
Exactly.
It was not the right words because we could
Right,
have
right,
went in a whole different direction with that because
right.
technically he did call me foolish.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But you knew how to translate that.
Hmm.
That's the beauty, right? And that's so much, we're talking about men and women.
Yes.
Oftentimes we need that translation. He
Yeah.
wasn't saying you're a fool. He's saying, I'm scared for you
Yeah.
and I'm worried about you and I can't control you because you're a grown ass woman. So what I can do is tell you that only fools are traveling right now. And therefore in your brain, you'll be like, well, I'm not a fool. I won't travel. And his job as a parent is done.
Right, exactly. Hmm. And so that's why I brought that up because I know that was a man, that was a man talking to a woman, but it was a father talking to a daughter.
Yeah,
But sometimes that same thing happens in relationships
100%.
where a man will say to a woman, "Oh, I don't care." And he just means about that particular subject right there, that one sentence, not every thought you have for the rest of your life. But
Right,
you said you don't care about me.
right.
How did me get put on the end of that sentence? I said, I don't care. I
Yeah.
didn't say about you, right? And so, like, that's the stuff that men and women do. We stress ourselves out, women, because we translate male language
Mhm.
into, we try to translate it into femalese, and
Right.
it doesn't translate like that.
No. And
Yeah.
when I hear, when you just said that of I don't care, what he's really saying is I don't understand why this is important to you. It's not
Yes.
that he doesn't
Thank
care.
you.
He just doesn't understand. And so if you could flip that back and say, well, here's why this is a big deal to me.
Oh,
And then what's beautifully underneath that is, this doesn't make me feel safe. This doesn't make me feel actualized. This doesn't make me feel trusted. This doesn't make me feel good. And so that's what the real root, that's the medicine, right? That's what, if either sex can say to the other, this is why, and this is why it's important. And if that man cares about you, then he cares about what's important to you. If that woman
mm,
cares about you, she cares about what's important to you. But we often don't say, like your dad, he didn't say, hey, this is really important to me. I'm losing a lot of sleep about this. You're my
mm.
baby. I love you. I'm so concerned. If anything happened to you, it would be devastating. That's like if we could unpack that sentence.
Exactly. Yes.
I mean, it did not come in that package. But wow, what a beautiful example of how much communication
Yep.
is left unsaid and for us to navigate. And I think there's this idea that's challenging in the culture, which is listen to exactly what we say.
Yep.
And yes, and learn to read between the lines of your partner. Right. I remember I watched this a Facebook post where a very, very successful female coach said, men, what do you hear when a woman says, whatever you do, I don't want you to leave, or no, whatever you do, I want you to leave right now. And
Mm.
all the guys were like, she said leave, I'm leaving, she said, like, down the line, down the line, down the line, down the line. And then what she did was post the actual, she said to women, what do you really mean when you say leave right now? And it was, God, please stay and fight
Make
for
me
me.
feel better.
Please, yeah, please, like whatever you do, don't leave. Like all of these complete opposites. And
Yep.
and yet the third message from society is like, listen to what people say. Right?
Mm.
It's disrespectful to not hear things at face value. But come on. We're
Right.
humans. We very few of us speak 100% from the heart with vulnerability,
Right.
right? Like for your dad to say that, like, I love, it would just ruin me if something happened to you. I would be
Yep.
devastated. I wouldn't know who I am as a man. That's a vulnerable thing to say.
Exactly.
You would have
And
to
we are
imply
not
some
talking
kind of
about a vulnerable dude here.
He vulnerably said, only fools travel right
Exactly. That was as
now.
vulnerable as it gets to call me, first of all, right? We got to talk about a man's man, right? I mean, a man's man.
Yeah. The
Yeah, frat
vulnerability meter
boy.
went up like 0.01. It just like it twitched.
Right. And you have to be able to understand that. And I think what society does too, I'm going to add to that, listen to people, what they say. It also says that men have to be more sensitive and women don't have to be less sensitive. And
Right.
nothing, you'll read no book, no instruction, no course out there that says, women, chill out.
Right.
Nobody is saying that. But somebody needs to say, well, if men have to move their vulnerability meter, then women, you need to move your sensitivity meter
Or be
because it's not
responsible for
fair.
it.
Yeah.
Take some ownership for, I've been around very actualized women who say, this is, a 10 on my trigger meter. And I realize that you're responsible for it getting to 3, and the rest of it is me taking it to 10. So
Mm,
please help me being a 10 right now, but also realize I'm not putting all of this on you.
mhm.
And that's an instant, like my guard goes down, I relax, I can think, I can feel and breathe again and go, oh, okay, you're right. The thing I said did trigger her. But what it did was unlock a door to her own stuff. And by
Right.
her acknowledging that, I know I'm not feeling attacked. I'm not feeling blamed. I'm not feeling shamed or belittled. I'm actually enrolled as a partner to help her take that from a 10 back down to a 2 or a 3.
Right. But also adding to that, knowing if how it happens, right? So it's using that same example with my dad, bringing that conversation to me. He was already triggered. The moment I got on that plane, he was triggered. When I got back on the second plane to come home, he was triggered. He was already triggered several times. He listened to me. That wasn't even my first trip. So I don't know how long he had been triggered. So he was already triggered. So I kind of needed to take responsibility for that part, which is why I brought this up, because we have these different ideas of how we should be experiencing this quarantine and this social distancing and this
Right.
COVID-19 crisis and this financial crisis that we're going through. Is so much that we have all these opinions and ideas. But what I had to take into consideration was his idea of what quarantine should look like. And also that I had already triggered him 3 times. So even though his words could have triggered me,
Mhm.
especially years ago before, like you say, actual, like I was actualized, even though his words could have triggered me, I still needed to know that I had already triggered him.
Mm. Beautiful, right? Think of how much insight that gives you,
Hmm.
how much power that gives you, for lack of for a more subtle word or a more blunt word. Think of what choices you're allowed to make when you realize, oh, this is someone who's triggered. And I
Hmm.
now have a choice to let my own meter go up to 10, be like, well, you never respected me as a kid. And here's I'm a grown ass woman, not gonna tell me what to do. And like all of that is right there. It's very available. I think one of the more empowering places people get to is when they realize they have the right to be angry, mad, sad, but they don't. And they don't feel it. And it's an authentic, like, sure, I could get upset about this, but I'm choosing to see it from the other person's perspective.
Yes, I
Like,
love that you
whoa,
said that. Yes,
game
yes.
changer, right?
Hmm.
Like, holy
Hmm.
smokes, not everybody experiences the world the way I do.
Right. And we all are guilty of that. Like we are all very self-centered, egocentric. We
Mm,
see it from our view. And to actually see it from somebody else's view, which we'll never really be able to do, but we can try, we can give some effort to doing that. If we're not doing that though, we are damaging our own mental health
mm,
and theirs.
Say more about that. Why do you think it's damaging to both?
Okay, so first is damaging ours because we're not stretching ourselves to see that perspective, right? Because that stretches that growth. And to stretch yourself is to connect, is to meet that person. Because I already
Mm,
said we have two different perspectives. We're never going to be able to see each other's truly, but we at least can stretch and try to meet them somewhere on that path of perspective. And
yeah.
then we're affecting their mental health because they have an expectation that we'll at least try to see.
Oh, beautiful, right?
Yeah. And when we don't do that, it breaks their heart even more.
Right. Don't you
Yeah.
think that's what most people in relationship are craving the most? Is just the belief that their partner is willing to meet them halfway,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
For sane,
Mhm.
really, there's some. Of course, there's outlier people, there's narcissists, there's yada
Right.
yadas. But I think for most people, it's just the do you care enough to make an effort to at least try to see this from my perspective? That right there, it just levels the playing field. And again, it seems to take all the armor down, and it's like, oh, let me take my defense system and put it on the back shelf for half an hour because I can see you're trying.
Yes.
I see you're at least you give a shit enough to see it from my place. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. And as a therapist, I see it a lot. Like just sometimes the act of the other person, because it's not always the man. Sometimes the woman doesn't want to come to
Mm-mm.
therapy. And so just the act of the other person coming to therapy helps that person stay in it just a little bit longer. They're like, well, at least they're willing to take this step with me.
Right.
And also, when I give the exercises, if they are at least trying them, then it helps the relationship continue to grow and continue to keep moving. And
Yeah.
even if it doesn't work, even if they both usually learn so much just from coming to therapy, because therapy doesn't say if you come to therapy, you won't be divorced. That's not what therapy is there for. Therapy is to say, if you come to therapy, you will learn more about your relationship. And then you
Uh,
can make a decision what to do from there.
right. Right. And people are most often making decisions blind or triggered,
Yes,
right? Which
exactly.
is
Mhm.
probably the two worst positions to make a decision from.
Right. And
Yeah.
if we're blind, that's affecting our mental health because a lot of times when we don't know we're blind,
Yeah. For
I see it
sure.
so clearly. No, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. One of my favorite teachers, Kobe Kozlowski, did us I had an exercise where she says it's like we have an octopus on our face and that we're looking around like, you guys, I don't see it. There is clearly no octopus. And everyone's like, doing the thing.
I
Yep.
love
It's a
that.
hard lesson to look in the mirror and go, oh, there it is.
Yep.
It's on my face. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
It is so true. And because we have those blind spots that we think we see, it's fine if you know you have a blind spot and you can say to your friend or your loved one or your, spouse, oh, tell me what did I do? I didn't
Mhm.
notice that, and you're curious. So all of this is part of our program that we teach. But curiosity, that's the one that changed my life. I was never curious. I was like, no, because I know everything. So there's nothing to be curious about.
Whoops.
Exactly.
Ah, the old days. I remember those too.
I'm like, I am 30 years old. I've been here a long time. I have learned a lot. I know it all. What could you possibly tell me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Life is either black or white. There is no gray. Oh, it's all gray. Whoopsie.
Yes. Oh
Ah,
my goodness. The year I learned to play in the gray. That's what I called it. Play in the gray. That was
I love it.
it was like because I was so black and white. It was like, look, this is all the stuff I know, and
Mm.
whatever you're bringing me that I don't know, it doesn't exist. It
Yeah.
doesn't exist because if I don't know it, it must not be real.
Right. Right. Right.
hmm
Right.
So
Or
my
it's.
mental health was totally affected by my blind spots.
Mm, yeah.
So stressed out because of what I believed
Right.
was true and was not curious enough to
Mm,
be opened up to the possibilities.
right. What if everything you think is wrong? What if everything you think is black is actually white? I think it's the beauty of people who have hit rock bottom and had
Yes.
to really look up at their lives or reevaluate their lives. It's a hard place to be. It's an awful place to be, but yet it's often the most enlightening place to be
hmm
because you
Yeah.
do realize how much gray area there is, how much you've brought to the situation, how much you're contributing to your own pain. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Now, I didn't tell you to talk about blind-sided blind spots. I didn't tell you I was going to bring this up because I didn't know I was. But you just triggered a thought because there could be a man going through what people call a midlife crisis, and
Mm-hmm.
he could be in quarantine right now. And this woman that he might be in quarantine with will have no idea what he's experiencing. But what you just said is exactly what he's experiencing. He is beginning to question
Mm-hmm.
everything. Everything he thought was black, he's like, well, what if it's white? And
Right.
what if I should have all this time been doing this and I've been doing that? He is now reverting back to 19 years old. He
Mm-hmm.
wants a do over. He wants to do it over. He probably wants a new girl. He wants a new car. He might even want new kids. He'll say, I love my kids, but
Right.
yeah, and I'm gonna talk about that in a later episode because I do not like that sentence. Like, why the heck do you feel like you have to give a caveat about loving your kids? But that is what he's going through. He'll say, I love my wife, but right, he's rethinking everything. And
Yeah.
then he is stuck in a house with this woman who has probably could have been one of those bad decisions he made when he thought the world was black, just finding out it's white. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh shoot,
Right.
and I got a whole American dream here that is turning into an American nightmare.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I want to go there
Okay.
because you may have experienced, and I'm going to let me give the audience a little breakdown. So the man that's going through a midlife crisis is likely about 40 to 55 years old. And the reason why the age range is so wide is because these days, the man before he goes through a midlife crisis, he is grinding. He's like, I gotta figure it out. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna put my head down. I'm gonna get all the things I need to get. I'm gonna put this plan together. And like you said, your plan 2 months ago, he had this plan. His head is down. He wrote out the plan. It's gotta work. If it doesn't work, I'll tweak it a little bit. I'll go back to work.
Mm-hmm.
Get out my way. Don't nobody get in my way. It's like he is just working the plan. His head
Mm-hmm.
is down and he's in it. And then one day he happens to glance up and he's like, holy crap, this is nothing like what I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
That man is having a midlife crisis. Now, that could happen Like it usually happens after your 30s, unless you're like some tech genius and you were 19, you started your first company or something like that, but or 14 and you started your first
Right,
company.
right.
But mostly it happens around 40 to 55, and you look up and the light is starting to shine on that American dream, and you're like, I don't like this American dream. And it's not what I thought it would be. It doesn't feel right. And now you're in question of everything. You know this guy?
Yes. I've worked with this guy a number of times. I have a chapter in my book called katabasis, which is a Greek term for a breakdown. And I
Okay.
say it's like it's a crisis. And I want to use that word intentionally
Okay.
because I imagine everybody listening to this, yourself included, Kane, has had a time when you woke up, and it may be after a trauma. It may be like the day after your partner leaves, the day after you get the diagnosis that you're sick, the day after you go bankrupt. It could be,
Mm-hmm.
or it could not be. It could just be the time in your story when the old ways stopped working.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a day when everything that was true yesterday is no longer true.
Mm-hmm.
And why it's such a crisis is imagine, I just got chills.
Yes, me
Uh,
too.
Imagine if you woke up tomorrow and you were in the same body, but everything else about you was different. Like if I had taken a random stranger off the street, it's like a great, 80s movie, and suddenly we put that person in your body and they're lying there like, who the hell is this guy? What the hell is this house? What do you mean I'm a professional chef? I don't even like food. That's how it feels
Yes.
for
Yes.
so many people. And so there's an actual, almost like a reorganization, I think, of the psyche, where what we loved yesterday, we may despise today. And the
Mm-hmm.
person who we're living with or lying next to has no idea because physically we haven't changed.
Yep.
We can feel it.
Yep.
And so what so often is happening to this, especially if it's a man, it's the game he was playing, he realized he can't win,
Ugh.
or the game he was playing, he realized he doesn't want the prize anymore. And
Oh.
that's a really hard place to be. I think we need to be compassionate about that.
Yes.
How many of us have come to the party only to realize we don't even want to be there? But you have to
Man.
come to the party before you can leave it so often, right? And so
Yes.
we
Yes.
maybe
Yes.
also have been acting like my 20-year-old self, my 14-year-old self or 11-year-old self dictated my first three careers. And then I realized, like, God, I really don't want to be doing this anymore. Why is it abhorrent to think about going to the office today? Like, why am I literally like, it's taking every ounce of energy for me to go to the office today when yesterday I loved this shit?
Oh.
And that's why we call it a crisis,
Yep.
because there's this in between place of like, if you lived on one island and you're going to go to the island that's a mile away, when you wake up 500 yards offshore, and you can't go back to the first island and you don't even see the second one, most people call that drowning. Or they call it being shipwrecked, or they call it like
Yeah.
lost at sea, which is it's not how we want to be,
No,
right?
no. Oh, but
And it's
can
it's
I
the
just
start
read
of the hero's
the
journey, right?
statement you said? He doesn't want the prize anymore, right? Mm. Because it almost is like it's like all is lost at that point. You work this freaking hard and you
Hmm.
don't even want the prize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've worked with people like this.
Yes.
I know
Yes.
people that
I
in
love
their
this man. Like this
first,
this
yeah,
man wakes me up in the morning. This is the reason why I wake up in the morning.
right? And I think what we have to say to him specifically is it's okay. It's okay to get a medical degree and in your second year of practice realize you don't want to practice medicine.
Yeah.
You really want to be a writer.
Yeah.
It's okay to the writer to say, okay, you've published your second book and it's not what you want. It didn't give you what you thought you wanted.
Yes.
And just to have the allowance that there's a different energy between, hear this, acquisition energy is very different than having energy. Like I may
Yeah.
want a brand new TV for a year, Like every day I think about it, or I put a little money away. It's in the wanting. It's in the wanting. But the experience of having, like, oh, that's kind of like my old TV. It's just bigger. Now what? But so it can't go back to the wanting energy.
I
People
know.
experience this so often in relationships, right? It's like the hunt, the
Yes.
chase. I can
Yes.
imagine what it's like to be with you. I can imagine what it's like to date you, to marry you, to have kids with you, to have sex with you, all of it. And then all of a sudden you're in my life.
And
And
it's
you're like,
like,
oh,
oh, it's like the last.
that's not really what I imagined it.
Yeah,
She's actually a human who has her
yeah.
own wants, needs, desires, hopes, dreams, and aspirations. That's very inconvenient for my fantasy. Huh.
Yeah, yeah,
Now what do
yeah.
I do?
Tupac has a line in a song, the anticipation of love making got me shaking when I'm standing near you, right? And so I always imagine that whatever he was imagining in that moment, just like, oh, this is gonna be so freaking awesome. But
Yeah.
then, yeah, that, and then what? Right? And then reality. Then
Right.
yeah, the new fantasy, you have to now create this new fantasy of reality.
Yeah, and most people don't get past
Yep.
the reality stage, right? They're so in love with the fantasy stage that when they get to the reality stage, it falls apart because, oh
Yeah.
my God, you're actually human.
Yep.
And so then we break up and I'm back in the fantasy stage. And that's amazing because it feels good and it's energizing and it's adrenalizing and it's fantastical. And then, oh, wow, I realize again, you have hopes, dreams, and all these inconvenient and emotions. Ugh. So
Yeah.
we have to break up and I have to go find a new fantasy. And that
Yes.
may be 6 months, it may be 5 years.
Hmm.
But I think at that time period too, Kine, there's a maturation where men go from one stage to another. And it may
Yeah.
be that the warrior stage that they were in earlier, the conquer, the kick ass, to
Yep.
go climb the mountain, to do the things, it's hard for us as men to realize, why am I not interested in all the stuff that I was interested in
Mhm.
2 years ago?
Right.
Why does the idea of climbing Mount Everest go from the ultimate fantasy to something that sounds pretty stupid? What
Mm.
happened? And if that can happen, what else has shifted that I may not know about? And then you used a great word earlier, that people aren't comfortable in the mystery. They're not comfortable in the curiosity. All
Hmm.
of a sudden we go from it, because that's a beautiful question. Wow, what happened about me, my life, my partnership that makes me feel this way? Let me get
Yeah.
curious about that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Most people do is, okay, this doesn't feel good, let me get rid of it,
Yep.
or let me numb it,
Yep.
right? Let me not sit you down, my partner, and say, wow, I have to tell you, this incredible thing happened yesterday. I'm sorry, this is going to be really hard for you to hear, but I don't know which way is up right now.
Hmm.
And I just need to share that and let you in on it, and get your thoughts and your support on it. It's very different than, I know, I'll just start sleeping with my 19-year-old assistant. That'll
Exactly.
solve everything.
Because that's exactly what happens to some
Yeah,
things.
whatever.
Yeah. Hmm. You got these
That's
two choices.
yeah.
Treat my partner like a friend and dig in and get vulnerable, or
Yeah.
irrational, quickie, yeah, with
Yeah.
somebody who's probably gonna fall in love with me, whose heart I'm gonna break, and then I have two problems now.
Chaos and mayhem. Right. And we can go even deeper. Someone you'll
Yeah.
probably end up getting pregnant just for fun. Because that shit happens all the time. Right? What happened? Well, in his year of discovering himself, he knocked up an 18-year-old. Well,
Yep.
great. Now your life is complicated as shit, brother.
Yes.
Now your life is a disaster.
Just
And
because you
you've
want
brought
to
a
be
child into
curious.
it. Right.
Yep.
Yeah,
And you
I
brought a
think
child into it just
it's a
because you want to
very
be
common.
curious to go deeper and see what just happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In
Instead,
your
you push against that.
in your experience, why do you feel like that age bracket is when this happens to men?
I think it's just part of the natural development. And what happens is, in our natural development, we believe that we stop developing after teenage years. Society has taught us that developmental stages is, just born 0 to 5, and then this
Right.
age to this age, and that age to that age. And then when you get 21, you're grown, and that's it, just grown.
Mm-hmm.
That we've been taught that grown is the last stage. Well, So you
Wow.
see why I thought I knew everything.
Right. Right. Right.
Society
Right. Right.
taught me
Right.
that crap. It was like, you're grown now, you're good.
You're
And it's
grown.
not the truth because there's
Right.
still so many more stages. You know, I talked about my father earlier. My parents were pretty young. My mom was 20 when she had me. So I've seen them go through stages
Mm-hmm.
in their adulthood. Now I'm a very actualized, I was born actualized. Like this t-shirt I have on, you're bothering me. You're bothering me was my first words. That's how advanced I am as a child. At 2 years old, I'm saying full sentences and it's like confrontational. So I'm the kid that noticed this kind of stuff, but
Yeah.
I saw my parents grow so many years. I saw the way my father talked to me differently when I was 15 than he did when I was 18. Not because I was different, but
Mm-hmm.
because he was different. You
Oh
know,
wow.
saw him talk to me differently when I was 25, and one could think because we are egocentric, one could think that has something to do with us. That
Mm-hmm.
had everything to do with him. I learned watching my brother, and he turned 21 and didn't grow up until he was probably about 27, right? And so I think we have these developmental stages that we're taught that end at 21, but there's still this whole grown developmental stages that happen. And for men midlife crisis is very similar to a woman's menopause
Mm-hmm.
because women shift and change. It can also be equivalent to a woman's um, motherhood because motherhood for a woman is different than fatherhood for a man. And so when a woman becomes a mother, like you talking about one complete 180, whatever she used to
Yeah.
think was fun, she no longer thinks is fun. She
Mm-hmm.
is completely different. He may not have that same shift when he becomes a
Right.
father, but that midlife crisis, what we're going to call it, or that existential crisis that he just hit, like I'm
Yeah.
questioning everything, black is now white. When he hits that, it's because he's now hit a developmental stage where none what used to be important is not important, because here's the real answer to your question, because he's now losing his programming.
Ooh. Say a little more about that,
So he had
please.
been programmed for so long. So 0 to 7, he was observing the world. 0 to 7, he's like, what's happening out in this world? What does this all mean? And he started to make interpretations of what it meant. And people were dropping those interpretations in his head with little phrases like, don't be a girl, or when you grow up you gotta have money, buy your mommy a house, whatever people dropped in his head. And
Mhm.
so he got this anger, he got greed, and he got lust, because they were like, that's cool, you can feel anger, you can feel greed, you can feel lust, but don't you dare feel sad. Like at the beginning of this podcast you said you felt sad. What? Who gave you permission to feel sad, Traver? Like, you don't feel sad, you're a man.
Right.
Right? No man can feel sad. He can only feel anger, he can feel greed, and he can feel lust. After that, he don't have anything else to access. So that's why he went and slept with his 19-year-old assistant, because
Mhm.
all he had was lust to access. Because he could have been anger. He probably went out and got in fights and bars too. He
Right.
could have accessed greed. He could have said he had already got done with greed. He was like, I'm not doing greed anymore. I did greed. I don't
Right.
care about the money. I want meaning in my life.
Mhm.
And he thought maybe meaning would come with sex.
Right.
So he went
Because
in
it
and
because
got
it usually does
exactly,
in the
yeah,
male in the male
yeah, right, exactly. It
right.
so
He
does.
wants intimacy, but that's the only
Right.
way he knows how to acquire intimacy or create intimacy.
Yeah. And so
Right.
one of those is going to get challenged. And when one of those gets challenged, then all of them start to get challenged. Because he's like, wait a minute, you told me that greed was okay. And now I've been greedy. I got all this money. I bought all these things. I impressed all these people, but I'm not impressed.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So now
Because it
he's
hasn't hit him in the heart. Right.
right.
A Ferrari doesn't really affect your heart.
Right. So
Mm.
now his programming is being questioned. He's like, I'm deprogramming myself. I don't like this. This feels crappy. Now he can do it on his own, like time and repetition. He'll figure it out on his own, kind of feel his way through. And it could take him 2 years to get back on track, which is why sometimes at 55 a man ends up getting divorced and then marrying somebody younger. And
Mhm.
so he's trying to feel his way through, or he can come to somebody like you and I, go to one of our programs, and he can do it quicker. Not that he doesn't still have to do it, because I watched your live the other day on the do hard shit.
Yeah.
He still has to do it. It's just going to be a lot shorter.
Right. right?
Yeah. So it's
And
not, and it
hopefully,
won't be as hard if you have a guide.
right, and you'll do less damage along the way
Mm.
because your energy's not shooting out sideways where you can say, okay, I hear you and see you that you want a deeper, more meaningful relationship. Probably your 19-year-old assistant makes you feel good,
Mm.
right? And boosts your ego and listens to you and thinks you're amazing and thinks you're this incredible man, which you're not getting that reference from elsewhere in the
Oh,
world. But
yes.
that's not the intimacy you want. You want real eye to eye, partner to partner intimacy. Someone who's going to look into your heart and say, I see you, rather than I look at the maturity of your packet, the package that you're presenting with,
Yep.
and just be in awe of you simply because
Yeah.
of time and experience on earth. Yeah, I feel for that man truly, because these are, for lack of a better term, it's a spiritual crisis. It's a
Yes.
emotional crisis. It's what do you do when your world gets turned upside down? That's a spiritual crisis. It's
Totally.
with the ground that used to be under my feet are no longer there. That requires a very different skill set than most people have in the world, which is go out into the world and solve the problem, as
Yep.
opposed to sit in the room and look inside of you
Yeah.
and just be with the discomfort, be with the pain, be with the mystery, be with the unknown, and say, okay, insides, what am I really after here? I'm after a life of more meaning. I'm after
Yep.
fulfillment on a level that's different than my bank statement, what's in my garage, and
Ooh.
etc.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm on the feeling place now. I'm in the heart space. I don't know what to do here. I've never been here. Where do I
Mm.
go to seek someone who's had to walk the same path? Okay.
Yep.
That's the real challenge for someone like that. I have so much compassion for people, especially now, because a lot of our world, the coaching world, the therapy world, the self-help world, says like, great, everybody's stuck in a house together, they're all going to figure their shit out. Or they're stuck alone in a house, you'll figure yourself out. It's like, but if people don't have the tools,
Right.
you know what, everybody's stuck in a house and they're going to dig the perfect hole. Well, no one has a shovel,
Yeah.
so they're not. So let's just stop fantasizing about
Right. They're about to get real dirty. It is.
that. Yeah. So I have so
Yeah.
much compassion for people who have a question they don't have an answer to, because
Yeah.
that does create tension, that does create anxiety, that can create a depression. And it just creates upset. Right?
Totally.
There's so much suffering happening right now.
So
People
true.
have lost their go-to thing, be that their
Mm.
relationship, be it their job, be it their form of expression, be it the gym, be it their poker group, etc. So it's a time for us all to take a deep breath and say, okay, that woman who I just heard yelling at someone running without a mask to go put a fucking mask on, I need to have compassion for her,
Wow.
because she's so overwhelmed and so afraid and so
Yeah.
anxious, and she's like your dad. That's her way of saying, hey, I don't feel safe in the world.
Yeah.
But she doesn't know how to say that, so she yells, put a mask on, you.
Yeah.
Right? And then the person who
Exactly.
hears that doesn't hear, oh my god, you feel unsafe and you're worried about your grandkids or your mom.
Yep.
They hear, you're trying to control me, you're trying to dominate me, you're trying to exert your will on me, so now I'll
Yep.
yell something back. And now
Yep.
we've just created even more upset and suffering in the field, as opposed to being like, okay, I get it. Yep, you're scared. That little bandana doesn't really do much anyway, but I feel you. I know you're scared. I get it. And then I get to go on with my day and she goes on with her day. And that's that collective, I think collective misunderstanding is a big deal right now.
Yes. So good. So good. And I want to say, adding to that, the tools that we need, because you talked about not having the shovel, the tools that we need are, it's like a shed. It's a whole shed, right? And I think that going back to programming, we've been taught that it is just a shovel, right? You need to dig a hole, and that it's just a hole, right? But it's not. It's the shovel in the hole. That's the first step. And then there, maybe we need to pull out weeds. We need another tool for that. And then maybe we need fertilizer, and we need that. And maybe we need to get a big bobcat and come in and really dig deep. So
Yes, we do.
yeah, but we have to take like this podcast is like that first step, and that might just be the little hoe thing, right? Not even a whole shovel. You might not even be ready for a shovel. You might just need to get a little hand tool and just
Yeah,
move the dirt around. Don't even go digging yet.
yeah,
You know. And so I think that you and I coming together on this podcast, people listening, is the first part of that,
yeah.
filling up that tool shed. So with that said, I want to see if you can pull out something from your courses or programs, and the work that you do, and I can see if I can pull out something that they can use right now, at towards the end, because we're towards the end of this thing that's
Sure.
happening, we think.
Yeah,
So
maybe.
I think the one that I mentioned earlier is definitely my number one go-to when it comes to a course module, or, and I hate using these words, so please
Mhm.
delete them out since this is live. Please just delete them out of your brain. But the one thing that I find as the biggest like aha moment for people is be curious. When
Mm,
I say that and they're like, huh? Like what? And how do you do that? And it's slowly but surely, you just start to ask some questions.
mm,
Okay, and you start to put yourself, like we said, in that other person's perspective. So that's number one. I think, even though it's number 5 in our program, the first one, the first step that I also think is pretty good is awareness. And
mm.
it's kind of like, just, oh, I was just triggered right there. You don't have to do anything.
Right.
You don't have to change anything. You don't have to ask that person to change. You don't even have to change. Still be just as angry as you are,
Mm,
but just notice it. Just notice. That's the word that I want you to, 2 words that I want to leave you guys with. It's curiosity. Just be curious. So curiosity and notice. Just
mm,
notice what's happening. Just take that first step to just notice what's happening right now.
mm. Amazing. I think it's so important. And I'll add in or chime in with it. One of my favorite things to have people do, either in relationship or they can do it with themselves, is to take a deep breath, have you and your partner have some space. If you have to get away from the kids, get away from the kids just for 5 minutes. And you're going to set a time period where me, as the person asking the question, isn't allowed to respond until the entire answer comes through. And that's the answer to this question: how can I support you right now? And then I'm going to
Ooh.
hear the answer and realize that the answer has nothing to do with me.
Yep.
So if you say, I need you to do handstands and feed me Swedish fish, the candy, I would be like, that's odd. And that's exactly what she needs. I'm not here to question that. I'm not here to say that's stupid. You know what I really think you need? None of that. I just listen to the feedback and then
Mm.
ask this follow-up question in my own head. What if she's being honest? What if that's
Mm.
really what she does need? And then sit. And then if you're with a partner, have them ask you the same thing and answer honestly. And the answer cannot be nothing,
Ooh.
right? Because a lot of people
That's
are
a good
afraid to
point.
say what
Yeah.
they need. And I get it. It
Yeah.
takes some vulnerability to say what you need. So for partner, and if you're single, actually ask yourself this question. And I like to break it down because men and women are different, and have
Yes.
men especially say, what do I need as a man right now?
Mm.
What do I need as a man in this situation? I'm alone. I live in a house. My business is a little bit weird. Things are this. What do I need as still as a man?
Mm.
Okay, I need exercise. I need good food. I need a
Mm-hmm.
journaling practice. I need camaraderie. I need to reach out to one of my friends.
Yep.
I can't be isolated. Okay, beautiful. Then I need to act on those things. That's very different. It's a very different question than what do I need as a father? What do I need as a son? What do I need as a brother? But a man, I want you to look in the mirror and say, what do you need as a man? Okay. And same with women. What do you need as a woman right now in this situation if you're single? If you
Yeah.
want to make it even more interesting, we can drop it down another level. One of the things I've done too is ask, what would my 10-year-old self need
Mm.
in this house? Like, okay, cool. Yeah, he would need X, Y, and Z. And that just adds a little bit of flavor, because in a crisis, it's not just me, the 44-year-old man, who's going through the crisis. There's also some part of me that's a little kid that's still freaking out of like, oh my God, the
Yeah.
world's going to end. We forget that we're in bigger bodies with more resources, etc. So I
Yes,
think
we
those are
do.
two really powerful questions that people can ask themselves.
Yes. And I want to go back because you gave an example from a male standpoint, but I want
Yeah.
to make sure women get an example because men have been taught to give women space. Like lately, a lot of conversation has been around giving women space. So if she says she needs this, men, you know, and even in the programming, yes, dear, happy life is a happy wife is a happy life, you know, though that programming stuff. Women
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have that programming. Our programming is that we don't have to do anything. He does all the work,
Mm-hmm.
right? The work is his, and we show up once the work is done. That is our programming. And so relationships are not going to be any different because we're taught that the man needs to court us and deserve us and show us who he is, and then we can, okay, yeah, you can marry me, kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. And so when we get in relationships, the same is true. We're like, keep working, keep working. Okay, I see you. Yeah, all right, now I forgive you. So I want women to understand when you ask that question, the same is true. When you ask that question, what do you need? Tell me the question again, Traver.
What do you need as a man
So if you're
right now?
asking that question, if you're asking him that question,
Mm.
you first,
Oh, I'm sorry. How do I support you? Was the question.
okay, yes, thank you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Uh, how do I support you? If you're asking him that question, how do I support you? And like you said, Traver, take yourself out of it. It has nothing to do with you. First, you have to be curious. You see how the two things that yeah. And so, because what you said is you can't go back and say, that's stupid. That make, mm-mm. This has nothing have to do with what you already know. You're just being curious in that moment. Just be curious. Whatever he says, I need you to do 10 jumping jacks. You know, it's like, I don't know how that's going to make you feel better, but you don't care. You're just being curious and you're just giving him what he said he needs. Because the second question you said is, what if it's true? What if he's being honest? What if that is really what he needs? And here's the last thing I'm going to say, and then we're going to wrap this up because Traver has to go. So Traver has a serious commitment. So, anyways, this is giving me, I'm getting triggered right now because you're leaving me. I'm feeling abandoned. I think we need to talk about that. But the last part of that is what if he doesn't know? What if he is honest, but when you do the 10 jumping jacks and he's like, oh shoot, that wasn't enough. I thought that was gonna make me feel better, but it didn't. And I'm gonna give you a super simple way to say he's just freaking human. You know how you eat 3 cookies because you got the 3 cookies out the bag and you're like, I'm just gonna eat 3 cookies. This is gonna be enough. And then you're like, oh, I gotta go back and get 2 more. Right? And that is all that has happened for him. He thought the 10 jumping jacks was gonna be enough. Turns out he needs you to do a couple sit-ups too.
Yeah.
And I'm using this in that. Please, ladies, know this is just an analogy. It's not gonna ask you, probably not gonna ask you to do 10 push-ups and jumping jacks or whatever I just said. But just understand that he didn't know he needed 2 more cookies.
Yeah.
And she didn't either, guys.
Right. This is such a beautiful time for the allowance of our humanity to sneak in.
Yeah.
And go, wow, this person who I'm living with and relationship with is far more complex and dynamic than I ever could have imagined. And I'm going to sit back with that curiosity and that compassion and say, okay, I'm here to serve. I'm here to help. I'm here to be a partner. I'm here to be an ally. If they're going to teach me how to do that, then I'm going to listen.
Yep.
They're allowed to
Absolutely.
change their mind, just like you're allowed to change your mind. This is such a fluid, dynamic situation that so many of us are getting to day by day. What do you need? What I needed yesterday, I don't need today.
Yep.
What I think I need tomorrow may shift drastically because everything's changing so fast right now.
Yep.
And so giving our partners a space that has compassion, empathy, and curiosity in it, I think is the greatest gift we can give them.
So true. And we'll end right there.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
having me.
Thank you. This was so
Again.
freaking awesome. Yeah.
My
Yeah.
pleasure.
So, guys, thank you for being here because you're awesome. I am so thankful for you, and I hope you took something away from our conversation today. We'd love to hear from you. So you can send us an email at podcast@presidentiallifestyle.com. Tell us your thoughts. If you have any questions, tell us those too, or you want to share a story. We'd love to hear it. So we will see you. I will see you tomorrow. And I think that Traver will be back.
I'll be back.
He'll see you soon too. In the meantime, have a prosperous day, my Prosperos.